Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. I didn't want to attend the week-long seminar, but there I was, taking the place of my boss, David Anderson. David and I had worked together for almost 5 years, and during that time, I had been happily married. My life felt stable. I loved my wife, Sophia, my job, and the city we lived in. Everything was comfortable. No complaints, even in the bedroom. Things were more than perfect. In our 20 years together, Sophia had never once turned me down for intimacy. Our intimate life wasn't just active, it far exceeded what I imagined most couples experience. I often heard men at work or in social circles complain that their wives weren't interested in making love. But Sophia was different. She was always ready. She went out of her way, dressing provocatively and playing different roles to bring any of my fantasies to life. Sophia had a talent for becoming whatever character I desired, whether it was a seductive temptress or an innocent, naive girl. Role-playing became a near-daily activity for us, sometimes even outside of the house. We'd act out scenes in bars, restaurants, and even in public places. If you think I was the one initiating these games, you'd be wrong. Most of the time, it was Sophia who started them. Her favorite scenarios often included elements of domination, submission, or forced seduction. Everything changed when she suggested the idea of involving another man. While I enjoyed our role-playing, something about this particular fantasy unsettled me. I couldn't quite figure out why, but it caused an inner conflict. Even though the fantasies were exciting, I felt guilty afterward. I always told her how thrilling it was, but emphasized that these fantasies should remain just that, in our imagination. Sophia seemed to understand me, but despite my requests, the subject of her being with another man kept coming up for months. Eventually, she took it further, pretending as if she had cheated on me. Every time I came home, she would spin elaborate stories about her imaginary affairs. Strangely, these stories turned me on, and afterward we'd be overwhelmed with passion. But I always made it clear that while I enjoyed the fantasy, I didn't want it to become a reality. Then, during an unexpected business trip, I received a message from an unknown number. "Your fantasy is coming true this week," the message read. I replied, "Laurel, you must have the wrong number." The response came quickly. "No, I know who I'm writing to. Check your email, Oliver." I hurriedly opened my laptop and checked my inbox. Sure enough, there was a message from an unfamiliar address. The email read, "Pay attention to house number 322. It's on your street, isn't it? That's where I'll be with your wife." My heart stopped as I continued reading. "I'll have her by Wednesday. You won't be home until Friday evening, so she'll be more than satisfied. Don't worry, I'll keep you updated throughout the week. I might even send a few photos for you to enjoy." Panic consumed me. I immediately called Sophia to ask what was going on. She sounded completely calm. "Nothing's happening," she said casually. "I just got home from work and there's no one here. How are things with you? Found yourself a girlfriend?" I replied sharply, "No, I haven't. My only woman is at home, don't forget that. I don't need anyone else." She laughed softly, then her tone became more suggestive. "How about I give you a surprise when you get back? Something that'll blow your mind?" For a moment, I was speechless. "What are you planning?" Her voice grew even more seductive. "You've always wondered what it's like to get the leftovers, haven't you?" My heart raced, and I mumbled, "Honey, that was just part of our game. You're not serious, are you?" Her voice lowered teasingly. "And why not?" She paused before adding, "Are you sure you wouldn't like it?" Then, with a laugh, she said, "Yes." "And what do you think?" I asked cautiously. "Listen, darling, I want you to promise me something. I don't want this to go beyond harmless flirting or role-playing. The thought of you being with someone else drives me insane. You're mine, and I can't shake this fear, especially after that letter. I can't bear the thought that this could destroy our marriage." A shadow of confusion crossed her face. "What letter are you talking about?" she asked. I explained, "I got a message from an unknown number. It said that my fantasy is about to come true and told me to check my mail. When I did, there was a letter, supposedly from you, but obviously from someone else. It described some guy's plans. Well, you get the idea. I didn't get to finish before she interrupted me. That wasn't me, she said firmly, with a slight smirk in her voice. After a short pause, she laughed. I didn't send any letters, but that sounds pretty wild. Maybe I should try something like that, she joked. We continued the conversation, and I promised to let her know if I received any more strange messages or letters. As soon as I hung up, my phone buzzed again with a new message. It read, I know you're worried, but don't be. She might still be useful to you when I'm done. My fear immediately turned into rage. Either Sophia was lying to me or she was hiding something serious. If she was involved with someone, she was either unaware of the danger or deliberately concealing it. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. I stormed into the conference I was attending, but my mind was elsewhere. I couldn't focus on a single topic being discussed. By the time I returned to my hotel room that evening, my thoughts still consumed me, and I was horrified at the thought of what might be happening at home. As I reached for my phone to call her, another message from the unknown number arrived. Your wife is busy tonight. We're going on a date. Wish me luck. Attached to the message was a photo. She was in a seductive black dress. My stomach turned, and I immediately dialed the home number. The phone rang endlessly, but no one answered. I started to panic and dialed her mobile, straight to voicemail. I didn't even bother leaving a message. Hours passed and the phone buzzed again. Second base, the new message read, with another photo attached. Her dress was lowered, exposing her chest. She was sitting in an unfamiliar car, and a baseball field was visible in the background. The sight of her wedding ring gleaming in the photo made my blood boil. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the mark on her chest, knowing it wasn't from me. It felt like my heart was being ripped apart. Just then, another message came through. This time, her dress was hiked up even further, revealing more. Third base, the message read. Didn't think I'd get this far tonight. Nausea washed over me and I nearly passed out. But I knew what I had to do. I opened my laptop and desperately searched for the earliest flight home. The earliest flight was at 5 a.m. I called 2 colleagues from the conference asking them to cover for me. They agreed. Back in my hotel room, I packed my things and set the alarm for 4 a.m., knowing full well that I wouldn't be able to sleep. As I lay in bed, another message came through. I'm staying with her for the night. She said she's ready for anything. Don't worry, I'll take good care of her, the message continued. My heart clenched, and tears of despair, helplessness, and heartbreak soaked my pillow. I put my phone on Do Not Disturb, deciding to get at least a couple of hours of sleep before the early flight. When the alarm went off, I was already dressed and ready in minutes, having showered and packed the night before. On the way to the airport, I finally checked my phone again. There were dozens of messages, most of them pictures of my wife, completely naked. One of the messages read, "Hurts, doesn't it?" I stared at the screen before typing my response. Hurts? Let's just say, when I find you, you'll know what pain is. When the plane landed at 8 a.m., I rushed to the baggage claim, thinking only about getting home as quickly as possible. After finishing my business at the airport, I headed to the long-term parking lot to pick up my motorcycle. Securing my bags, I got on and drove home, making sure to strictly observe the speed limit. As I crested the hill leading to my street, something felt off, so I stopped and turned off the engine. There was a car in my driveway that shouldn't have been there in my absence. Cautiously, I took out my phone, turned on the camera, and slowly rolled the motorcycle forward, stopping right in front of the driveway. I took several pictures of the car, making sure the license plate was clearly visible. After that, I switched my phone to video mode and hit the start button on my motorcycle. I revved the engine twice like I always did, the roar of the exhaust loudly announcing my return. The camera was aimed at my bedroom window. The curtains were wide open, and there, in full view, was my wife, naked, with a shocked expression on her face. Behind her, smug and confident, stood David Anderson, my boss. His face displayed a disgusting mix of arrogance and superiority. A wave of nausea washed over me, and I couldn't hold it in. I vomited. My body trembled, but I managed to look up just in time to see my wife frantically trying to leave the room. I pocketed my phone, grabbed the clutch, shifted gears on the motorcycle, and rode away without looking back. When I reached the porch, I heard her shouting after me, "No! Wait! Let me explain! Please!" But I didn't stop. The roar of the engine drowned out her voice as I sped away. Before I could fully process it, my mind jumped to an absurd thought. Did she even bother to cover up? Or was she putting on a free show for the neighbors? Sophia was undeniably attractive, and I had no doubt the neighbors would have appreciated the view. I found a cheap motel, paid for a room in cash, and headed to the nearest liquor store. I bought a bottle of whiskey and went back to the room, deciding to drink myself into oblivion. At that moment, more than anything, I just wanted to disappear. But I couldn't. When I finally woke up, or at least sobered up a little, I grabbed my phone and called a friend. I told him I needed a good divorce lawyer, remembering his recent tough breakup. He gave me the contact of his ex-wife's lawyer, not his own. "You need the best, right?" he joked. I smiled. It was nice to know he hadn't lost his sense of humor through all of this. I made an appointment for the next day and headed to an office supply store. I bought a printer, high-quality photo paper, and a few other essentials. Back at the rundown motel, I began preparing my case. I already had all the evidence I needed, but it was time to organize it. I printed out the emails and text messages confirming the affair. My phone had recorded conversations, and I started transcribing the lies my wife had told me. Once everything was compiled, I got heavily drunk again. The next morning, I managed to pull myself together and head to the lawyer's office. First, I stopped by the bank and withdrew half the funds from our joint savings account. We had separate checking accounts, so I wasn't worried about those. I arrived at the lawyer's office a little early, and when I was finally called in, I was surprised by her appearance. For someone with such an outstanding reputation, she didn't make much of an impression. I handed her the folder of evidence. She flipped through it, nodding approvingly. She asked a few basic questions, which I answered as honestly as I could. Then she paused, staring at one of the photos of my house. "Is that him?" she asked sharply. "Yes, that's him," I confirmed. What happened next caught me off guard. She slammed the folder shut, her face hard to read, but it was clear something had shaken her. Without explanation, she stood up and said, "Wait here, I'll be right back." It was almost half an hour before she returned. In her hand was a small slip of paper with an address and a phone number. She handed the folder back to me, now with a serious expression. "I have to recommend you contact another lawyer. I can't take your case. Follow the hallway, turn right, go downstairs and take a left. Someone will be waiting for you at the end. Remember, we didn't speak. Understood?" "Okay," I muttered, confused and a bit stunned. I stood up and followed her instructions. When I reached the end of the hallway, I was met by a short, balding man, as if he had been expecting me. He invited me into his office and asked me to bring a specific file. While he reviewed the documents, he asked me a few questions, to which I answered as best I could. He was very attentive, slowly checking the papers and photos in the folder. After a while, I gathered the courage to ask, "How much will this divorce cost me?" He smiled and said, "I'll handle your divorce for free." Then he pulled out a standard form from his desk drawer, wrote something on it, and slid it over to me. "As I said, the divorce is on me, but I'll take 40% of the settlement amount, plus all expenses." Confused, I asked, "Settlement? What settlement?" With a mysterious smile, he said, "We're going to win this. So are you ready to finish this and close the chapter?" As I left his office, my mind was spinning with thoughts of what would come next. I needed a fresh start, a new job, and a place to live. The next morning, I tried calling Sophia at her office. When they transferred me to her desk, I heard her voice but immediately hung up. Knowing she was busy at work, I got on my motorcycle and rode to the house we once shared. When I arrived, I gathered my things, ignoring everything else. I hitched a trailer to my truck, loaded my motorcycle, and dragged out our old bed, frame, mattress, and everything, onto the driveway. After dousing it with gasoline, I stepped back and threw a match. The flames erupted instantly. Without looking back, I got into the truck and drove off. My next destination was the company where I hoped to get a job. A few months ago, I had done a favor for one of the businesses there, and I was confident it would help me. The interview was just a formality. After completing the paperwork, they told me I could start the following Monday, giving me a few days to settle in. Then, I began looking for a place to live. I found a decent one-bedroom apartment in a good neighborhood and rented a storage unit for my motorcycle. In the local newspaper, I saw an ad for a furniture sale, so I bought a bed and a couch. After that, I stocked up on groceries and tried to adjust to this new phase of my life. But it turned out to be harder than I thought. I missed my wife terribly, and instead of finding peace, I sank into grief over the life we once had. Nearly a month passed before I finally checked my mail. I think I had been avoiding the reality that I lost my wife to another man. Among the unread messages were several from my lawyer, but one in particular caught my attention. It read, "Call me. It's urgent." I picked up my new phone and dialed the number. A cheerful voice answered, "Blake and Cox Law Firm. How can I assist you?" "Hello, this is Oliver Garcia. I received a letter asking me to call Mr. Blake." "One moment, Mr. Garcia. I'll transfer you. He's expecting your call." After a short pause, I heard my lawyer's voice. "Oliver, I thought you had disappeared. Where have you been?" "I moved. Found a new job and a place to live. Do you need my new address?" "Yes. Give it to my secretary when we're done. Listen, your wife wants to meet. She's been very persistent. When can you come?" "Mr. Blake, I live far away now. It's hard for me to make the trip. Maybe you could just tell her she made her choice." "I understand. You've just started a new job and it's difficult to take time off. How about this? When's your next day off?" "I work Monday through Friday." "What time do you usually finish work?" the man asked. "Around 4, I replied. "Good. Here's what we'll do," he interrupted before I could finish. "I'll get in touch with your wife's lawyer and we'll arrange a date, time, and place to meet with you." "I can't leave right now," I said, trying to set boundaries. "There's no need to leave. We'll come to you, Mr. Garcia. It won't be a problem," he responded confidently. I hesitated, sensing something was off. "And you're not going to charge me for this, right?" "Of course not," he calmly replied. "Your former boss, Mr. Anderson, is covering those costs." Hearing that name, I felt a wave of anger surge through me. Why should he be paying for this? The thought of Anderson made my blood boil. There's no way I'm going to some meeting with that arrogant jerk who smiles about taking my wife and making me look like a fool. I just can't handle that, Blake. I can't take the pressure, I burst out, the irritation evident in my voice. "Mr. Garcia, there's something you need to understand," Blake said firmly. "This meeting isn't for Anderson to gloat. He's the one who's going to be humiliated, not you." I wasn't convinced. Anderson had slept with my wife in our home, then had the audacity to mock me when I caught them. How could I possibly come out of this situation as a winner? "Soon you'll see for yourself," Blake reassured me. "Now that I have your number, I'll call you as soon as we finalize the details." 3 days later, a thick packet of documents arrived from my lawyer. I hadn't expected the divorce process to involve so much paperwork. In my mind, divorces were just a waiting game until everything was over. I tossed the letters into the corner of the bedroom, which I had turned into an improvised office. Lately, I had been sleeping on the couch in the living room, since no one came to visit me anymore. As promised, Blake called and confirmed the meeting for Saturday at 5 p.m. in the hotel's banquet hall. They were serving dinner, so I didn't have to worry about that. But I had bigger concerns: how to mentally prepare for what seemed like a confrontation. Every time I thought about it, I saw Anderson's smug face, staring at me from my bedroom window. That week dragged on endlessly, one of the most exhausting of my life. On Saturday, I set my alarm for 4 p.m. to get ready. Once I was dressed, I headed to the hotel. The banquet hall looked grand, and as I entered, I saw my wife for the first time in months. At the other end of the hall stood David Anderson, my former boss. The room was full of people in expensive suits and elegant dresses. As soon as I walked in, 2 huge men in suits, built like football players, approached me. I shot Anderson a hateful look and barely restrained myself from wiping that smug grin off his face if I had the chance. The two men reached me and asked, "Are you Oliver Garcia?" "Yes, that's me," I answered cautiously. They stood on either side of me. "What's going on?" I asked, feeling uneasy. "We're here to make sure you don't do anything you'll regret," one of them said dryly. At that moment, I spotted Sophia, my wife. She looked like she wanted to come over to me, but a female lawyer from Blake and Cox stopped her. I assumed she was representing Sophia. They were clearly arguing, and Sophia clearly wanted to speak to me. I didn't understand her persistence. After what she had done, I wanted nothing to do with her. She had betrayed me with another man in our bed. How could I ever get over that? But no matter how much I tried to suppress those feelings, seeing her again stirred something deep inside me. I couldn't deny that part of me still cared about her. They sat me down in a chair. My lawyer took a seat on one side, and one of the hulking men sat on the other. "What's next?" I asked, still trying to grasp what was happening. "These guys are here to make sure you don't do anything reckless. I know you probably want to tear Anderson apart, which is why I brought them," Blake calmly explained. "But look, Anderson's not smiling anymore." I glanced over at Anderson and for the first time saw uncertainty on his face. At that moment, I truly saw Anderson's expression for the first time. It wasn't one of pride or arrogance as I had expected. Instead, he looked serious, almost grim. There was no sense of victory. I realized that my wife had wanted to come closer to me, but the relief in her eyes showed she was thankful others were keeping her at a distance. Finally, my lawyer stood up from his seat and walked towards the podium at the front of the room. "Mrs. Patterson, you initiated this meeting," he said calmly. "Now that we are all here, would you like to begin?" Sophia's lawyer, Mrs. Patterson, approached the podium and spoke in a restrained, professional tone. "I am Mrs. Patterson, representing Sophia Garcia. Thank you for coming, Mr. Garcia." She paused briefly before continuing. "First and foremost, I must say that this entire situation has been a nightmare. The circumstances have been incredibly difficult, and I've done everything I could to expedite the process. I apologize for the delays, but the matter is finally resolved." She took a deep breath before adding, "Mrs. Day, please proceed." Another woman, Mrs. Day, stood and approached the podium, addressing me. "Mr. Garcia, I am Mrs. Day, representing David Anderson. I want to apologize on behalf of my client for the distress he has caused you. As part of the plea agreement, Mr. Anderson fully acknowledges his involvement in the affair with your wife. Furthermore, he has agreed to cover all legal expenses and associated costs. He will also pay compensation to both you and Mrs. Garcia, $5 million each. Your lawyer has already received a certified check, which you can cash at any time. Mr. Garcia," she continued, her tone softening, "from my experience, I urge you to listen carefully when Mr. Anderson speaks. You may realize that your wife is not entirely at fault for what happened." She gave Anderson a brief nod before stepping aside. Anderson slowly approached the podium, visibly nervous, and met my gaze. "Oliver," he began cautiously, "as part of the agreement with your lawyers and your wife, I am here to make this statement. I'm also prepared to answer any questions you may have, though my lawyers may advise me to refrain from answering some." He paused, as if waiting for a reaction from me, but I remained silent, staring at him. The only thing I could think about was the unbearable urge to strike him, to unleash the rage boiling inside me. But I restrained myself, holding back my emotions. Clearing his throat, Anderson continued. "This is not the first time I've been in this situation with a married couple. In fact, this is the third time. The first man I did this with still works for me. The second couple? Well, I ruined their marriage. They divorced and they have no further ties to me. And now there's your case, the third couple I chose to manipulate for my personal gain." He lowered his head slightly, and there was a hint of unease in his voice. "By hiring you, I overpaid you, fully knowing that I would use you later. I pushed you into financial difficulty," he admitted, his voice trembling. "I pressured you into taking on more debt, new cars, motorcycles, and even a larger, more expensive house, all financed through my company. These were things you could afford at the time, but I knew that if I cut your salary or fired you, that debt would crush you. His discomfort became more apparent. He fidgeted slightly, and his voice grew less confident. I justified it by thinking that only a fool would take on such debts without considering the risks. But deep down, I knew I was deceiving myself. I intentionally set a trap for you. And then, he hesitated, clearly more distressed. I approached your wife. I told her that I was making a list of employees to lay off. His face flushed with shame, completely unlike the arrogant persona he usually displayed. I told her there was only one way to keep your name off that list. Mr. Garcia, it took your wife nearly 2 months to agree to my terms. He paused, the silence stretching into what felt like an eternity, before he summoned the courage to admit the next part. While you were away on a trip, I took advantage of your wife. I made her believe that if she didn't take care of me, you would be fired, and you wouldn't even get severance pay. I threatened her, making her feel like she had no choice but to let me humiliate both of you. Anderson couldn't meet my gaze, his eyes cast down as he continued. I didn't expect you to return from the seminar so early. I had hired 2 women to distract you, to make you feel guilty, but they failed. Your wife should be proud of your loyalty, he quietly added. Despite everything, I've never seen a man remain so faithful under such pressure. Finally, Anderson turned to his lawyer, who nodded in approval. He turned back to me, his voice barely audible. Oliver, your wife is not to blame for this. The fault lies with me, and me alone. Please reconsider your decision and give her one more chance. Her sole intention was to secure your family's future and ensure financial stability. He quickly glanced at his lawyer, then looked directly at me. I'll answer any of your questions. His confidence threw me off. The audacity of his plan was beyond my comprehension. At first, I didn't want to ask anything, but curiosity got the better of me. When did it start? When did you first sleep with my wife? His response was immediate. Not until after you left for the seminar. How long did it last? Do you even remember how you first approached her? He hesitated, then admitted, It took me almost 4 months to convince her she had no other choice. His words hit me like a lightning strike. It was around this time that she started making me feel like a stranger, especially when we were together in bed. I turned to Sophia, for the first time truly seeing the anxiety in her eyes. Why our bed? I asked, though my attention remained on her. Our bed, I repeated, cutting through the tension between us. David realized I was no longer speaking to him. He shifted his gaze to Sophia, who sat silently. Our bed, he echoed. I didn't take my eyes off my wife. She avoided my gaze, offering no explanations. My chest tightened with pain, my heart pounding as if it could explode. The emotions overwhelmed me, threatening to destroy me. I abruptly stood up and left the room. Outside, I began searching for a secluded spot to be alone. I crouched down, curling into myself, desperately trying to contain my emotions. My nails dug into my palms as I tried to suppress the storm of anger, betrayal, and sorrow raging inside me. Although I managed to hold back most of the sobs, a few loud sounds still escaped. My body was still trembling when I felt a hand on my shoulder, followed by someone's embrace. Great. Just what I needed, I thought with bitter irony. The lawyer is trying to comfort me. But as the embrace tightened, I noticed something different. The smell, no, this smell, was different, somehow better. And strangely, this embrace brought more comfort than I had expected. I didn't want to open my eyes, squeezing them shut in a futile attempt to hold back the tears. My body couldn't stop shaking. Suddenly, I felt someone's cheek gently press against mine. Stunned, I said to my lawyer, I'm divorcing her, and David will pay me $10 million. Sophia will get nothing from him, or else I'll make sure he regrets destroying my 20-year marriage. Understood, Mr. Garcia. 6 months passed, and Sophia and I divorced during that time. After the divorce, Sophia was left with 20% of our savings, and her family disowned her when I sent them evidence of her affair. As I had demanded from David, she didn't receive a cent from him. Now, she's struggling to make ends meet, living in a modest apartment. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel. Greetings, my dear viewer. You're on the channel The Price of Cheating. The channel is for those who appreciate traditional family values and condemn adultery. So be sure to subscribe to the channel. Let's get started. This was supposed to be our last summer at the cottage, just the two of us. We had made the decision to pass it on to the kids, who were eagerly awaiting the opportunity to keep it in the family. With each passing year, the trips here became more difficult for us. It was no longer the easy getaway it had been in our youth. We were preparing for a move, having sold our home. Everything from our house was packed and sent to storage, waiting for us in the gated community where we planned to move in November. The only things we brought with us to the cottage were our clothes. We had already sold our main car, leaving the old trailer by the lake for the kids to use when they visited. Our new home would be in a retirement community. Just a mile from the community gates was a small medical clinic, part of a larger medical center. Everything we needed, stores, shops, was within walking distance, and we'd get by just fine with golf carts for transportation. The weather there was perfect year-round, a pleasant change from the storms we had grown used to. This place seemed ideal for spending the rest of our lives. Patricia and I had lived a wonderful life together. She loved me, and I loved her deeply. Like any couple, we had our disagreements, but we always found a way to resolve them. She was an amazing life partner, though as we aged, intimacy became a rare occurrence. Still, we kissed, we hugged, and most of the time, that was enough. The hugs remained constant, and occasionally a spark of passion still flickered between us. Our children had grown into happy and successful adults, with wonderful partners and fulfilling lives. Patricia and I had 6 children, 11 grandchildren, and even 3 great-grandchildren. Our family was our greatest source of pride and joy. It was a beautiful evening in late August. The sun was setting, painting the sky in soft pink and golden hues. Crickets were just beginning their nightly serenade when Patricia turned to me and said, "I need to tell you something." I had been expecting this moment and was prepared for it. Our family was close, full of love and warmth, and I had thought I could keep my secrets forever. But I knew the time had come to reveal them to Patricia, especially since I suspected she had her own secrets. Well, most of them, at least. "All right," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I had anticipated this conversation before our move, though I thought it would happen a bit later. "I thought you'd wait until after the move to bring this up." "You knew this was coming?" she asked, surprised. "How could you know? I just made up my mind today after seeing you relax with that bottle of brandy." "Yes, dear," I replied with a smile. "I've noticed how tense you've been lately. And let's be honest, we both drank quite a bit today. But don't worry, I haven't turned into some old drunk. My mind is still clear. The brandy just helps ease the pain in my knees." "No, Charles, it's not about that," Patricia said, shaking her head. "I have something important I need to tell you." "Oh, let me guess," I joked. "You found my stash? It's been years since my wild youth, but sometimes I still indulge. At my age, I wouldn't be too embarrassed if someone called me an addict. I doubt I have decades left anyway." "Charles, don't say that," Patricia said, clearly upset. "You still have so much life ahead of you. Please don't throw it away." "All right, then what? You found my collection of movies? I thought you'd figure it out at some point. You're too smart for me to hide that forever." "Charles, that's disgusting," Patricia exclaimed, horrified. "I had no idea about that." "Oh," I said, stunned. "Well, then it must be something else." The room filled with heavy silence before she spoke again. "Darling, there's nothing you've hidden from me that I don't already know. I'm aware of everything. You did the DNA test, didn't you?" "Yes, but that was a long time ago," I replied. "It didn't change anything for me," I continued. "The moment she was born, I saw his face in her. She never looked like me. As I told you before, Patricia and I raised 6 children, and one of them, our youngest, wasn't biologically mine, although Patricia gave birth to her. When you insisted on naming her Carla, everything made sense. I realized that you and Carl Donaldson had deceived me. You named her after him. When they did her blood work shortly after she was born, I immediately knew she wasn't mine. As soon as it became possible to do a DNA test, I secretly took a strand of her hair and tested it. The results confirmed it. Carla was Donaldson's daughter. and you carried that secret your whole life. Oscar, I'm truly sorry. Carla isn't your daughter. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Our family was wonderful, and it didn't seem to affect how you treated me. I loved you, and your betrayal didn't disrupt our daily lives. I wanted our children to grow up feeling secure, knowing that we'd always be there for them. That's why I stayed silent about what I found out. That's not like you. I expected you to get revenge the moment you found out. I did get revenge. But since you both kept your relationship a secret, and it didn't affect my life, Ginny and I decided to keep our revenge hidden. It took you a while to grasp what I'm saying. Ginny, of course, was Carl's wife, and she had passed away several years before this conversation. She died the previous year. We had our moments of quiet revenge. While you were sneaking off to Carl, doing your intimate things with him in the backseat of his car or out in nature, Ginny and I were in our bed, making love and creating the children Carl thought were his. What? Yes. You see, Carl and Ginny couldn't have children. They spent years and a fortune on treatments because Carl was infertile. His sperm just couldn't do its job. However, you got lucky with a 1 in a million chance from one of his treatments. But here's the most interesting part. All 3 of Carl and Ginny's children are actually mine. Do they know? Yes. Before Ginny passed, she told them everything. In fact, each of them came to talk to me afterward. Carl raised them, and they'll always see him as their father, but they understand what Ginny did. Without her actions, they wouldn't exist. You really came out the winner, didn't you? She asked, bitterness in her voice. What are you getting at? When we got married, you always wanted a big family, but I only wanted 5 children. Yet you ended up with 9, didn't you? Actually, 12. Her eyes widened as it dawned on her that I hadn't stopped at Ginny Donaldson. The truth gradually sank in further. My nieces? She asked, finally putting all the pieces together. Patricia had always joked that her nieces looked as much like my family as they did her sisters. She earned her gold star. Yes, dear. Your sister saw you sneaking away with Roger that night during our group trip. She followed you to the beach, hiding behind a tree, watching as the 2 of you were on the lounger. She overheard your conversation about how thrilling it had been to sunbathe naked, knowing that everyone was watching. I overheard your plot about your Wednesday meetups when we returned from our trip. You signed up for dance lessons, and he, as if by chance, joined a bowling club. But once a month you skipped class to secretly escape to a roadside motel. The curtains in the room weren't fully closed, leaving just enough space for me to take several compromising photos. I saved them all on my laptop, and if you want, I can show them to you before bed. You might enjoy reminiscing about those moments. I have other photos, taken at different times. Take Patricia, for example. Her expression was priceless when she realized what was happening. But don't worry, I didn't seek revenge on any of them. Life took care of that itself. It seems your behavior somehow attracts misfortune. Remember Danny Dawson, the mailman? He got caught dealing illicit substances. The police stopped him after receiving a tip. I think he's still behind bars. And then there was the time you made a move on your boss. Someone told his wife about it. And as you know, she comes from a prominent family in our town. One Wednesday, she decided to follow him. She caught him, literally with his pants down, in the arms of his secretary. The divorce left him penniless, and after the scandal, no one wanted to hire him. If you didn't hear, he eventually drank himself to death. You, though, got off scot-free. You were his Tuesday fling, and his wife never found out about you. Don't worry, your secrets are safe with me. Oh, and remember that exterminator who died in his van? It was the same day he worked at our house. Instead of a tip, you decided to sleep with him. Somehow the fumes from his leaking chemical tanks filled the van, and he never made it out. At least his death was quick and painless. Then there was Jack Riles, little Oscar's teacher. Firefighters found him burned to death in bed. Apparently, he fell asleep with a lit cigarette and never woke up. You knew about all of this, and yet you stayed with me. Why would I even consider divorcing you? To end up in some dingy apartment while you enjoy my house and salary? To see my kids only a couple of times a month? If I wanted to remarry, I'd have to work 2 jobs to support 2 households, depriving myself of any social life or hope for intimacy. You must be joking. Patricia, You've always been the perfect woman for me. You took excellent care of me, our children, and our home. Even with your part-time job, you earned more than people working full-time. You were and still are a rarity. I never even dreamed of letting you go. But I was unfaithful. I cheated. And you? You were something entirely different. A cheater with an insatiable thirst for more. So, I stopped playing by the rules too. I lost count of how many women I've been with. Tall, short, curvy, slim, blondes, brunettes, redheads, athletes, even celebrities. It was an exhilarating time. So don't feel like you owe me any confessions. I've never been honest either. We sat together for a long time, sipping brandy and watching the sun slowly disappear behind the horizon. Frogs and crickets filled the air with their night chorus, and for a brief moment, I felt a deep sense of peace. Eventually, Patricia got up and went to bed. I stayed outside, dozing off in the chair, with a slight smile on my face, content that she finally knew everything. The next morning, Patricia found me still in that rocking chair, my hand gripping a glass of brandy. The world around was quiet and peaceful, and my face was frozen in a calm, gentle smile. The night before had been filled with emotions. Tears quietly rolled down her cheeks as she listened to him open up his soul to her. Yet by morning, a deep sense of calm had enveloped her. She had long realized that her desires extended far beyond what Oscar could ever give her. Although he was the most passionate lover in her life, her thirst for more surpassed what any single man could offer. There were always others, lurking in the shadows, ready to take advantage of her weaknesses. In a strange way, she felt relieved when she learned that Oscar had raised children who weren't his by blood. It seemed to her a kind of poetic justice. For years, she had suspected that the mysterious moments when their finances worsened, forcing them into brief periods of austerity, were not accidental. Most likely, during those times, he had quietly been helping her sister or Ginny Donaldson, ensuring the well-being of his other children. But despite everything, he had always treated their youngest daughter as if she were his own. Recalling the odd misfortunes that had befallen her former lovers, Patricia was suddenly gripped by a troubling thought. Perhaps these accidents weren't accidents at all. Oscar, in his silent way, might have been seeking revenge. Oddly enough, this realization brought her a sense of justice. Oscar wasn't the kind of man who would lose a woman without exacting some sort of price. It was remarkable how he managed to maintain balance in their lives, keeping their home a sacred sanctuary. Everything that happened outside of it remained foreign, until last night. He had always loved her. Oscar had loved her fully, all his life. This extraordinary, unforgettable man cherished her so deeply that he accepted her flaws and found the strength to endure them. He lived by rules that she constantly broke. And now, sitting next to him, holding his cold, lifeless hand for the last time, she felt the weight of guilt pressing down on her. Her eyes fell on the glass of brandy clutched in his hand, and she gently removed it. Patricia picked up the phone and called their eldest son, urgently asking him to come to the lake immediately. She told him that his father was gone. After that, she reached out to her niece and to Ellen Donaldson, Oscar and Ginny's eldest daughter. Once the calls were finished, she returned to Oscar and kissed him for the last time. "Thank you, my love," she whispered quietly. The world around her sank into a peaceful, tranquil silence. For 51 years, she had loved a man who endured her countless infidelities. Now, years of guilt and suffering awaited her. This was the end for her. She couldn't imagine how she could go on now that her Oscar was gone. This concludes the story. If you like it, then put your powerful like and subscribe to the channel.